Hello, friends. I am Sarah Moore, founder of Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting, author of Peaceful Discipline, and the board president for the American Society for the Positive Care of Children. And I am so thankful that you are taking the time to be here and watch this course called Becoming Peaceful, Getting Started as the Parent You Want to Be. I realize that there are two different angles from which we might view getting started. Perhaps we have a child who is on the younger side or very young, and perhaps we're not even a parent yet at all, but we know that we either want to break cycles and do things differently than how we were raised, or maybe just really don't have a roadmap yet of how we want to do things, and we want to make sure that we start off on the right foot. If you are here for that reason, I promise that this is going to speak to you. I also acknowledge that there might be people watching this recording who maybe they don't have a child who's so young anymore. In fact, maybe their child is significantly older, whatever that means to you. Or maybe you are even a grandparent or a great-grandparent, because I am super grateful that sometimes grandparents and great-grandparents come through my programs as well. And if you are thinking, I am worried that too much damage has been done, I want to change, but we have so many years of negative patterns under our belt that I'm really still wanting to make things right, but I don't even know if it's possible. And good news, this is going to speak to you as well, because through the brilliance of the human brain, we have something called neuroplasticity, which means it is never too late to learn newer, healthier patterns. So even if you are in that latter category of parenting, grandparenting, even great-grandparenting, it's still absolutely possible to heal what needs healing and repair what needs repairing, and also learn what needs learning so that you can have a more peaceful path going forward. So in our session today, I'm going to go through 4 major steps that we can take as parents and caregivers, no matter what our story is. And it is all going to be evidence-based, but along with everything else I do, it's also going to be heart-based, heart-centered, because I realize that the head knowledge doesn't really do a lot of good if it doesn't also make sense in our hearts as well. So with no further ado, let me just jump into what it means to be peaceful. And frankly, a lot of us go into parenting with the assumption that parenting is something we do going forward. We only have today. This is not about changing the past. This is about affecting the future in positive and meaningful ways. That's true to a point, but frankly, we really can't fix today or do today in the way that we want to do it without spending a little bit of time looking at our own attachment history, our belief systems, our mindset going into parenting. Because let's face it, we were all raised by somebody. Maybe it was wolves, right? Maybe I was raised by wolves, totally legit. I'm going to say maybe that wasn't optimal parenting. And obviously, I'm joking. I should forewarn you that I'm a little goofy sometimes, and we'll just roll with it. If you have questions about, did she mean that? Go ahead and ask. But anyway, maybe we had some suboptimal parenting, or maybe we had really fantastic parents or caregivers who always showed up for us, always helped us feel like we mattered, like we had a voice in our family. They were non-punitive. No matter what our story is, we have a story. So this specific discussion is not going to spend a whole lot of time digging through our attachment history, but we have to know, as parents who are in the process of becoming peaceful, that we all do have some fairly hardwired scripts in our brains about whether children are worthy, whether children should have a voice, how a parent is supposed to respond or react when a child, quote unquote, misbehaves or acts in a way that might not be optimal based on what we believe they should be doing. We can get curious about, are these scripts that I am carrying in my body actually the scripts that I want to carry forward into my own parenting? I'll share a very quick example at a very high level. This is not going to be too deep or overwhelming, but years ago, I was invited by a friend of mine at the time to come and take care of her two little boys for the night. Her babysitter had fallen through and she just needed somebody to show up. So I said, I'd be happy to. This was long before I was a parent. This was long before I was in the parenting space. And I went inside her house. I'd never been there before. And her little boys were really sweet little guys, and they started to play ball. They had like a volleyball type thing that they started throwing back and forth across the living room. And I instinctively tensed up and thought, uh-oh, I'm sure they're not supposed to do that. That's going to be trouble. You can't throw a ball inside the house. Well, their mom walked right back in and she asked the boys if they were having a good time. She was totally unfazed. Clearly, they did not have this rule of you can't play ball inside the house in their home. So I was totally enlightened in that moment in realizing people parent really differently. It sounds obvious when I say it now, but if we can take that true story as a metaphor and say, what else might I be believing to be true? Are children allowed to play ball in the house? Are children allowed to talk back to their parents? Or can I reframe that as my child has a need to be heard and they feel safe enough speaking to me in that way, whatever that way may be, that they know that I am going to listen and show up for them and get curious about why they're speaking to me in that way, why they're so passionate about that? Or do I have a belief that parents do not allow their children to speak to them in that way? I am going to argue in that example that I just shared that it is much healthier for us as parents and caregivers to say, help me understand what is at the root of this talking back or this behavior or whatever, rather than simply coming in and putting a stop to it, like many of us experienced when we were growing up. So we really do have to get curious about the story that we are bringing into our parenting and ask the question, is that the kind of parent I want to be? Is that serving me? Is that going to create the kind of connection with my child where someday when they make a mistake, let's fast forward in time a little bit for those of you who have little ones, let's say they're 10 years old, 15 years old, 25 years old, whatever it might be, and they do something that is a capital B big mistake. They make a really atrocious decision that could have incredibly negative ramifications. Are we raising children with the kind of emotional safety where they will run to us and say, I need your help. I just made a really bad decision. Will you please guide me through it? Or are we raising children in a way where when they make that bad choice, they say, "Ooh, I need to do everything in my power to hide that, to conceal it from my parent or caregiver because I don't want to get in trouble," which we can agree is only going to exacerbate the problem. Not only are they left isolated and not knowing what to do when there's potentially a really bad thing going on, but also they feel so afraid to come to us that by the time we find out, there might already be some significant damage done, up to and including damage to the relationship, because we want to create the kind of emotional safety where our kids can come to us no matter what. Now, some of you might already be thinking, well, if I don't punish my child for this, how will they learn they're not supposed to do that sort of thing? I promise we'll get there in a little while. But it really has to begin with exploring this wiring that we have in our brain about, what do I believe to be true? Am I setting up my family for connection or disconnection with every response that I have? I do realize that I say we're hardwired to respond from our scripts. I'm actually going to amend that a little bit because it's, hardwiring in the sense that if you can picture a really old-timey computer where you could actually take out parts and then put back in new parts in ways that we probably wouldn't bother with in this day and age, it's hard to do that. That is hard work. It's much easier just to get a new computer. Unfortunately, we can't just go to Amazon and order a new brain. Wouldn't that be handy sometimes, right? But when it comes to parenting, as I mentioned, we do have the incredible gift of neuroplasticity, so that if we want to learn new habits, we can, but it is going to take practice and intentionality. It does take rewiring. So our brains are actually more soft-wired than hardwired in that way, but it's not easy. So I'm going to give you some tools a little bit later in this call so that you know how you can rewire some of that braining, that's a new word, I just invented it, how you can rewire your brain in a way that you can set yourself up for success as a parent. But you need to get curious to begin with by looking at your history and saying, what do I believe to be true? Are kids inherently bad, or are kids trying their best? Are kids deserving of adult level punishment and separation, or are kids worthy of our loving, compassionate guidance and support? Again, we'll talk more about those things in a little while. The next thing I'm going to talk about, beyond examining our history, beliefs, and mindset, is that we need to make a really solid effort to seek grace and compassion for ourselves. Because I don't know about you, but I have heard the term mom guilt. If you are a dad watching this, I don't know why the term dad guilt doesn't exist, because you have feelings just like anybody else. But what we know to be true, regardless of your gender, regardless of your lived experience, is that we all have regrets. We all have guilt. We all have shame. We all have moments in life, whether they are parenting moments or just general welcome to being a human moments, where we think, oh, I really messed that up in not just your everyday ordinary way, but in a totally colossal way. That is awful. And I'm having a hard time forgiving myself. I'm going to reframe this for you in a way that may feel a little bit uncomfortable for you, because you've been carrying this story, this guilt or shame story with you as if it's true, as if it's your reality, as if it somehow defines you as a human being. And I'm here to tell you that that is actually a really, it's a strong word, an evil way to view yourself. That does not come from goodness. That does not come from a place where we are forgiven. That does not come from a place of compassion. Any belief that we are carrying forward that we somehow are not worthy of our children's love, or whoever it is, their love, their acceptance, that actually holds us back from having the kind of relationship that we can have if we say, I am worthy of forgiveness. Maybe I continue to make mistakes because I'm human. I will always make mistakes, but my parenting sins can be erased as well as anything else if I choose to reframe them as teachers, and if I learn from them, and if I move forward in a way that models the fact that I am capable of learning new things. So, as Brene Brown says, and I'm going to misquote her here, but guilt tells us that we did something bad. Shame tells us that we are something bad. We are a bad person. So if we have some of those limiting beliefs that we simply are a bad person, we're not capable of whatever, we have to know that that's shame talking. And again, that doesn't come from any good place. That comes from a place that will block us from having the type of connection that we are designed to have as human beings. So we get to instead replace that with, I am worthy of grace. I'm worthy of forgiveness. I'm worthy of compassion. I'm willing to learn from the mistakes that I have made. And the only one who is still holding on to them is me. Now, quick point of clarification, other people might still be holding on to our mistakes too, but that is where we have an opportunity to ask for forgiveness, to say, hey, I really messed that up, and I'm going to do everything I can to make things right with us again. When we do that, in some ways, it doesn't really matter whether or not the other person grants us that forgiveness or not, because we are doing our part to confess, to make things right again, and to heal the relationship. They'll do with it what they're going to do with it. Hopefully, they will forgive us, but it's up to us to make the first move for the things we've done wrong. This can actually include apologizing to our children when we make mistakes. I realize that many of us were raised in homes where adults did not apologize to children. Adults were supposed to simply model their exemplary, humanity and not allow children to rise up to that level of being worthy of an apology until they were somehow, old enough to vote and drive a car or who knows what else. But in reality, we can think back. In fact, I'm going to invite you to do this as a group exercise. We can think back to a time when we were little. We all have one of these. Think of a time when your parent, your caregiver, no matter how good of a parent or caregiver they were, they really didn't show up for you in a way that you needed them to show up for you. Perhaps they were punitive. Perhaps they were detached. Perhaps they were too busy with whatever they were doing to really show up for you in a way that you needed them to. Imagine your younger self back in that moment with whatever it was for you. Imagine if your adult, and maybe they did do this, but imagine if your adult showed up for you later that day, the next day, sometime thereafter, even today, if they came back to you, excuse me, and said, "I'm so sorry. I really got that wrong. I love you and you deserve better. Will you please forgive me? Will you please let me try again? And here is exactly what I'm going to do to change my ways so that I can show up for you better going forward." Now, we all know one of the beautiful things about little kids, whether it's our inner child or our actual children in front of us, they are actually really good at saying, "No, I don't forgive you." I have personally experienced that many times. And I'm here to tell you the science behind that. According to the Gottman Institute, for every rupture in a relationship, for every single rupture, every single mistake that we make that is big enough to be noted by our nervous system and our memory, it takes 5 positive interactions to make up for it. This does not mean that we have to go out and buy our kid 5 toys, or that our parent or caregiver now needs to show up with 5 new BMWs in our driveway. It doesn't work that way. We just need to feel that emotional safety and attempt to reconnect 5 times. This is true for all relationships, by the way. It's true for marriages, friendships, co-parenting experiences, parents and children as well. So if your child is saying, "No, I don't forgive you," that actually makes sense. And your job is not to say, "But I apologized. You're supposed to forgive me." Just know that the best thing you can do is continue to show up for your child. And once they feel that emotional safety with you again, that's when you can essentially wipe away that mistake, wipe away that problem and say, "We're in a better place now." And then don't let shame continue to tell you that you are not worthy of love or connection, because you absolutely are. But you also need to release whatever angst you're carrying in your own body over the parenting choices that you have made. Because here's something that is true not only for children, but also for adults. And it's fascinating. We cannot learn, children cannot learn when they feel emotionally unsafe or highly dysregulated. What happens when we or they are feeling emotionally unsafe or emotionally dysregulated is that as humans, we go into fight or flight mode. And I don't know about you, but if I am outside my backyard being chased by a tiger, God forbid, because I live in Colorado, right? That would be a very bad thing. But if I'm being chased by a tiger, I don't turn around and say, "I really want to figure out how to make the very best lasagna I can possibly make. I'm going to pause and Google this right now because I want to learn something new." Doesn't work that way in the human brain. We have to feel, no matter our age, that there is no tiger in the room, no tiger within ourselves. We have to feel emotionally safe so that we can pause and learn that new thing. I'll talk more about that in just a little bit, but we have to be so gentle with ourselves, give ourselves so much grace and compassion so that we can be in a place where we ourselves can learn new patterns as parents and caregivers. The third thing I invite you to consider as you work through your quest to become peaceful is that remember that to discipline means to teach, not to punish. If we look at the root word of discipline, it's disciple. A disciple is a student. If we think of ourselves as a student or of any historical person as a student, as a disciple, who are our best teachers? Are they ones that make us feel safe? Are they ones that we want to learn from? The very best teachers are the ones we want to walk like them, we want to talk like them, we want to dress like them, we want to be like them in every single way. So part of the reason I named my book Peaceful Discipline is it's a reminder to us to be peaceful in the way that we are teaching our children so that they want to learn from us. If we are scary, if we are punitive, if we are nothing but great big grouchy feelings, that will be the emotional equivalent to the child, the tiger that creates so much lack of safety in their body that they can't possibly learn in that moment. Now, I realize some people are going to say, oh, believe me, I learned from being scared. Fear can teach, but it actually takes many more repetitions of fear for the memory to stick with us in a way that feels emotionally safe. We all have learned messages, lessons, life experiences through fear. But as far as becoming the person who we want to become, that only happened through emotional safety. That only happened through connection. That only happened in our own childhood and frankly in our adulthood as well, with the people who we felt safe to go to and say, hey, I messed up. Can you help me? Or I don't know how to handle this situation. Will you teach me? I've never experienced this before. Have you ever been through it? Those safe teachers are the teachers who we want to follow. We want to be their students. So our job is to be the kind of leader, mentor, teacher, parent, caregiver, where our child looks at us and says, that's who I want to be. I don't want to be scary. I want to be peaceful. I want to be a change maker in the world. I want to stand up for the oppressed. I want to stand up for myself when I am being oppressed or treated poorly. I want to know that I have a voice in the world. And the very first place a child learns whether or not they have a voice in the world, whether it's safe to stand up for themselves or others, is in the home. They have to know that their voice matters. That's not to say we can't disagree with them, but we can disagree in a way that does no harm. We can get curious and say, yeah, in fact, I experienced this in my home just this week because my daughter, in fact, all of us have strep throat at the moment. I'm feeling okay, which is why I'm here. But my daughter has wanted nothing but ice cream. I don't blame her. It feels good in the throat and she can eat it. I'm actually also kind of okay with it because it's getting calories in her body, which she needs because she's not eating much else. But this concept of, can I have more ice cream? Can I have more ice cream? Can I have more ice cream? At some point, I am also balancing that with, I would feel better if you had something with a little more nutritional balance in your body. So what else can we do? What can we collaborate on as a mutually agreeable solution so that I feel better about you getting some nutrients that will help you heal, but that also are going to feel good enough in your throat that you can eat the thing, whatever it may be. And we have come up with some brilliant out of the box solutions for getting her nourished. We can apply this concept to anything in parenting: more playtime, more screen time, more time out with friends, whatever it might be. The goal is to find a win-win scenario in learning to discipline our children in this way. because most of us have this negative connotation around the word discipline. We think it's a bad thing. If I go to the gym, I do not want my trainer to give me discipline. That's going to hurt, right? But reality is when my trainer is peaceful with me, knows what my body can handle, isn't going to push me to the point where I keel over and I'm so much for me, died in the gym, right? That's not the goal. The goal is how can I stretch my child within their window of tolerance while still being peaceful in a way where they want to learn from me? Because guess what? Whether my child is 2 years old, 12 years old, 22-year-old, or however old they may be, upwards and onwards or anywhere in between, I'm always going to be modeling things and teaching them things. And the very best way I can ever possibly teach anything is through the kind of person I am, as opposed to the kind of punishments I dole out. Last but not least, my friends, I want to share with you that we need, in our quest to become peaceful, to create specific intentions and work with our brain rather than against it. So being peaceful is a great goal, but frankly, it's too vague. I need to know, what does that look like in my home? What does it look like with my family? For me, it might be, and I'm making this up because fortunately this is not actually a struggle we have, but let's say getting out the door in the morning is a particular specific time of day where it's just always a train wreck. Man, we get so mad at each other, it turns into a power struggle. It's just ugly. If I simply walk around as a parent and say, I want to be peaceful, that's all well and good, but that does not give me any specific tool in the moment tomorrow morning when I'm trying to get out the door. So I want to be very intentional about that as one time of day where I need to think in very specific terms about what I want to do to be more peaceful in that moment. I'm not looking at the whole day. I'm not looking at 5 years from now. I'm not looking at yesterday either. Unlike where we began by looking at our history and our beliefs and our mindset, this is actually something that I want to visualize for tomorrow and tomorrow alone, or today. If today's the day I'm trying to get out the door. But this is a short-term view because I want to take the time to think about what exactly it would look like to get out the door in a way where I stay peaceful. What do I need to do for myself so that I can show up in a peaceful way? Maybe I need to make sure to stay hydrated with my yummy tea there. Maybe I need to make sure that I get some breakfast because if I don't get breakfast, I know I'm grouchier. Maybe I need to take a few minutes to pray, to meditate, to do whatever it is that grounds me. Maybe I need to exercise in the morning before I start my thing. All of this is going to be parent-centric right now because I'm the only one who can control whether or not I am peaceful to somebody else. This is not about, well, my kid needs to own their part. I can't control that. But what I can do is get really specific about creating a scenario where I am most likely to be my most peaceful self. I'm going to be accountable enough that if I notice myself starting to go down a path that I really don't want to go down, I hear myself raising my voice, I hear myself being the parent that I don't want to be, instead I can pause. It's a really brave thing to do, by the way, to pause in the middle of escalation and say, oh, I do not like the way that I'm speaking to you right now. I need to start this over. And then I take a breath, I pause, and then I say what I want to say in a more peaceful way. I might literally need to walk out of the room for a minute, recenter myself. I might need to do some tapping, some prayer, some meditation, some grounding work, whatever it might be. Doesn't have to take long, but I need to interrupt my pattern so that my brain can do that rewiring that I was talking about in this moment and say, oh, look, I can create some new neural pathways. I can create some new patterns. I can create some new things. And the only way that I actually solidify that new neural connection that I'm making about being more peaceful is to practice it. But here is something incredibly cool that we can do to help solidify, to help practice even above and beyond doing it, science-backed, we can visualize it. Simply picturing it is incredibly powerful, because the good news and the bad news about the human brain, my friends, is that our brain doesn't entirely, it does somewhat, but it doesn't entirely differentiate between what I imagine, what I visualize, and what's actually happened in real life. So if I can close my eyes for a minute and literally picture tomorrow morning, these are the exact steps I'm going to take. These are the exact things I'm going to do, knowing I can't control anybody else, but these are the things I am going to do. If I start to yell, this is how I'm going to ground myself. These are the words I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to wear. This is what I'm going to do. The more detail I can picture, the more my brain actually starts to record it as a memory. And then tomorrow, I get curious about, oh, can I bring this to life? So actually starting with visualization might be more beneficial to you than practicing it in real life. Also picture yourself apologizing if you mess up. Don't go into the weeds of picturing yourself making the mistake, but picture yourself starting over. Imagine yourself giving yourself that grace and compassion that I talked about a little while ago. Because the more gentle you can be with yourself, the more gentleness you have to come out of your body. If you are feeling so much angst, so much tension, so much anger, resentment, frustration, fear, whatever it might be, that's what's going to come out. The peace really does have to start within you. And if you don't feel it today, if you don't feel it tomorrow, get curious about what you are feeling. You're not wrong for feeling whatever you're feeling. Your body is trying to communicate with you that you have needs. And you have needs that deserve to be met. And I'm not talking about, I need my kid to behave. I need my kid to get out the door without, crying or yelling or whatever. My need is going to be something else. Maybe I need more sleep. Maybe I need more support. Maybe I need a parenting class to help me know that there are things I can do. Maybe I need a parent coaching program. I offer that, by the way. And anybody who watches this and lets me know you watch this, I am happy to give you a discount on the parent coaching program that I have. It's 12 weeks long. I'm not turning this into a sales pitch. I'm just letting you know that more support is available. But figure out what it is that you need so that you can be the kind of parent you want to be. Proactively give yourself permission to mess up. Because we're human, we're going to do that. I am an excellent messer-upper. I excel in messing up, but I also excel at repair. I know how to be humble enough to say, hey, I'm really sorry. Let's do that again. And that's powerfully healing. And I'll tell you this, another quick personal story. Yesterday, my daughter and I were putting up some decorations in the house that we had put in storage for a really long time. We got them out, and I have some that are, kind of sort of special to me. They're not a big deal, but I've had them for a long time. And my daughter wasn't paying attention, and she sat on one of them on the couch, and the handle broke off. But the first thing she did when that happened was actually to come to me and say, I am so sorry. I just sat on this. Will you forgive me? Yes, of course I forgive you. It's just a thing. But in my mama heart of hearts, I was absolutely jumping for joy that she had that level of emotional safety, that she didn't feel she needed to hide it somehow or not tell me or to lie and say, I don't know how it got broken. She felt safe enough that she was able to, as her default response, say, I broke it. I sat on it. And from that place, it is so easy for me to forgive her because it's so much more than about the thing. It's about the connection and the trust that we have together. I guarantee you this, I am not a perfect parent. There are times when I get upset when it is totally unwarranted. I too get hangry, right? We all do. But when you consistently practice being peaceful, not perfect it, but practice being peaceful, you will continue to reap the rewards in your relationship for so many years to come. And I promised I would circle back to the fear that some of us have about, well, if I don't punish my kid, how are they ever going to learn? Society isn't going to be so kind. They're not going to play with my kid when they want them to do the thing. They're not going to always be so peaceful. I'm here to tell you, I don't love society as it stands right now. There's a lot of hurt in the world. There are a lot of people who are struggling to depths that we have not seen before historically. Part of the reason that I want to parent in this way is that, number one, when we raise a generation of children to know that peace is possible, that's what they have to share with others. And the more children who are raised in this way, the more that will become the default of the world, because children will recognize peace in each other and say, I want to hang out with that person. I'm going to choose that friend. I'm going to choose that partner or spouse or, whoever someday. I want peace. And that becomes contagious in the very best way. Secondly, when someone does treat our child poorly, they'll know they don't deserve that and they won't stand for it. They will also, let's pretend for a second it's a teacher or somebody where they don't have a lot of options. They will also know that with us, we are always going to be their safe place to land. They can come to us, they can trust us, they can talk to us, and we're going to support them and give them the tools and the life skills so that they retain their sense of value and humanity and have nothing but goodness and kindness and compassion and faithfulness and gentleness and humility and self-control and all these beautiful things to carry it out into the world, because that's what they experience with us at home. So with that, very briefly, I want you to know that I have a little cheat sheet for you. I'm going to go ahead and share it right now. Obviously, this is the information that I just went through with you, but it has the 4 steps that I just talked about. Let me know if you want a copy of this, and I will gladly make it accessible to you. But with that, I want to thank you for being here.